Kabra Nagast as a historic document resembles ancient biblical narrative as it is arranged in a linear and chronological order, commencing with the creation of the first human being, followed by the establishment of the first kingdom on earth. Thus, from the very outset of the book's grand narrative, the reader is oriented towards a holistic worldview in which sovereignty and dominion over the earth is assigned by God Himself unto Adam. This divinely endorsed office is then transferred onto subsequent generations through a deliberate and distinguished hereditary line of kings, culminating in the establishment of the kingdom of Judah, which is also known as Judea, which flourishes sometime during the Iron Age. The capital of Judea was situated in modern-day Jerusalem under the reign of King David, whose wise and sagacious son, Prince Solomon, subsequently inherits the kingdom from his distinguished father. It is in this chapter of the Kabra Nagast wherein the reading audience is first introduced to the ancient civilization of Sheba, which has often been identified with both the southern Arabian region of Yemen as well as the East African region of Abyssinia. Both the Bible and the Quran mention this ancient kingdom whose sovereign ruler, Makeda, Queen of the South, is reported to have travelled all the way to Jerusalem in order to meet with King Solomon after news of his magnificent kingdom and proverbial wisdom reaches her through an emissary returning back from the kingdom of Judea. Upon reaching Jerusalem and meeting the king in person, Queen Makeda marvels at the level of sophistication and the advanced society which she encounters. Furthermore, her interactions with the sagacious king leaves her completely mesmerized and captivated by his awe-inspiring presence and his profound wisdom. This riveting experience, accompanied by the king's wise summons to abandon the worship of nature, culminates in the queen's willful and resolute submission to the worship of Elohim, the one true God, towards whom the king and his subjects had submitted their will. And with this sudden transformation in the religious order of the kingdom of Sheba, the political order was also reconfigured in a most unexpected turn of events. According to the Kabra Nagast, Queen Makeda conceived of a child on the night before she was due to depart from the kingdom of Judea. Subsequently, the text furnishes an account in which King Solomon is said to have furnished the queen with a tremendous amount of wealth and resources as she left to return back to the kingdom of Sheba. However, the most precious of these gifts was a royal ring by which her unborn child was to be recognized as a veritable son of King Solomon in years to come. In chapter 30 of the Kabra Nagast, the reader is informed of King Solomon's auspicious vision in which the sun is depicted as having risen and departed from Jerusalem towards Abyssinia, where it shone brightly over the people. Consequently, the reader is informed in chapter 32 of the Kabra Nagast that Queen Makeda delivers her child in the village of Addi Shmagali, which is situated in the northwestern region of Asmara in present-day Eritrea. Thereafter, Queen Makeda is said to have returned back to her kingdom with a male child in her possession. Her newly born son was named Ben al-Hakim, son of the Wise One, in honor of his father, King Solomon. However, the child would be most commonly referred to by his royal title, Menelik I. Therefore, it is with the birth of Prince Menelik and his mother's return back to the kingdom of Sheba that the principal theme and purpose of the Kabra Nagast is finally revealed and established. The reader is henceforth initiated into the dynastic worldview, which fulfills a very central and prominent function from this instant through to the very end of the book. The reader is also informed that Prince Menelik eventually grows into adulthood, bearing a strong and direct resemblance to his father, both in physical stature, comportment, and in wisdom and sagacity. Thus, when Menelik reaches the age of 21 years old, Queen Makeda bestows upon him King Solomon's ring, entrusting her son with the mission of traveling back into Judea and to return back to the kingdom of Sheba with a single tassel from the cloth that served as a covering for the sacred Ark of the Covenant, which was closely guarded by the high priests inside the temple of King Solomon. Although Prince Menelik was instructed to identify himself by means of the ring which his father had gifted him before his birth, there was no need for him to furnish this royal relic, for when he had arrived near the outskirts of Judea, the people recognized him as the king's son almost immediately. He was then taken to the king's palace, where he met his father in person for the very first time. The narrative at this point is somewhat predictable, because we learn that the king is overly joyed to meet his son, especially given reported accounts of how, despite having 1,000 wives and concubines, he could not conceive of a single male child to inherit his vast kingdom. Therefore, the arrival of Menelik was not only a great relief for the king, but it was also a very opportune moment for the effective continuation of the political establishment in the kingdom of Judea. Consequently, we are also informed by the authors of the Kabra Nagast that King Solomon attempts to persuade Menelik to remain in Judea and settle there as his inheritor to the kingdom. However, as we are already informed in the previous chapter, Queen Makeda had already given her son strict instructions forbidding him from settling in Judea. He was to return back to his kingdom once he had met his father and obtained a single tassel from the sacred cloth covering the Ark of the Covenant. Despite the tremendous and wondrous spectacles that bedazzled Prince Menelik, he remained loyal to his mother's wishes and declined the opportunity to inherit Judea and all of its marvels. Confronted by his son's resolute commitment to return back to Sheba, King Solomon is reported to have conceded to the request and subsequently issues orders for his administrators to transfer into the possession of Menelik the entire cloth that had been used as a cover for the sacred Ark of the Covenant. Furthermore, he orders that the Judaic aristocracy surrender their firstborn sons so that they may accompany Menelik back to his kingdom, where they were to remain in his service. We are then informed of the grievances that take root in the hearts of the nobles and the elders whose firstborn sons were enlisted into Menelik's entourage as a result of the king's decree. Angered by the involuntary and indefinite estrangement from their homeland, these young men contrive of a plan to steal the Ark of the Covenant from the king's temple in order to smuggle it out of the city along with them. Prince Menelik is thereafter accompanied not only by a retinue of noble Judean young men, but unbeknownst to him, he would return back to his kingdom with the actual Ark of the Covenant. The entire plot at this point is further accentuated by the fact that King Solomon is reportedly none the wiser, realizing his great loss only after the caravans had departed and the blessings removed from his kingdom, to be transferred onto the kingdom of Sheba instead, alongside the most able-bodied and ambitious young men of his society. When Menelik finally realizes that the people have brought along with them the sacred Ark of the Covenant, his entire fleet of caravans is miraculously lifted into the heavens and transported to the kingdom of Sheba, where Menelik himself is received by his people as a champion, returning home from a tremendous adventure while accompanied with a great host of noble men who were in possession of the most miraculous treasure, the Ark of the Covenant. Henceforth it is reported that the king was undefeated in battle, so long as his army were in possession of the sacred relic. Satisfied with her son's loyalty and success, Queen Makeda then abdicated her throne in favor of her son, thereby establishing the foundations of a new and mighty dynasty that would develop into a long-lasting chain of rulers lasting approximately 3,000 years. Consequently then, it is from this integral line of supposedly divinely elected kings from the house of Solomon that the subsequent emperors and rulers of Ethiopia would establish their claim to having a direct connection with the Judaic kingdom, which was chosen and blessed by Yahweh as a special pedigree. Thus the Kabra Nagast becomes a central and fundamental pillar not only in positioning Ethiopia as a veritable inheritor of ancient Israel, but also as the ultimate measure by which subsequent claimants to the Abyssinian throne were either recognized as legitimate or rejected as usurpers.